here today.
Thank you
it's
very much for this, your second coming. Yes, we'll take a short break, a very quick one at that, and we'll be right back to start the program proper. Stay with us. All right, welcome back, and the program is Galaxy Line. If you are just tuning in, and my guest is Professor Bola Akinteriwa. Did I call him Bolaji then? One Bolaji used to be Foreign Affairs Minister. Maybe that's what I'm confusing.
Yes, okay.
He is Professor Bola Akinteriwa, and I told you is the immediate past Director General of the NIA. Now, it's going to 2 years since you left NIA as DG. Do you hear cherry news from that end, or maybe you really don't bother?
Well, it's a very good question. News, yes. Sharing news, I wouldn't know.
How do you mean?
What I know is that the NIA continues to exist, all right, and the environmental conditionings of the existence as of today appear to me to have changed.
How do you mean?
Okay, for instance, as it is, what makes the NIA thick right from its existence, particularly under Bolaji Akinyemi, is more about the academic activities. It is more about the input of the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs to foreign policy making. It is the independentist position of the institute. When others are arguing probably along one direction, the academics that were there in the past will come up with powerful arguments and tell them that, look, this will be the ideal thing. You can recall the time Professor Bolaji Akinyemi will come up with theories, all right? He came up with the theory of a black bomb, African bomb. He came up with the theory of a concert of medium powers, which became a Lagos Forum. Thereafter, he came up with the idea that, look, you do not have to own the whole world or be the richest, the wealthiest in the world to be able to remain relevant in the political governance of the world. He said, look, what you have, your intellectual resources, the littleness of what you even have should be okay for you to make yourself relevant. That was the time of Bolaji Akinyemi. You had the time of Agbola Gambari, although he stayed there very briefly. He came up with foreign policy concentricism.
That's right.
As a foreign minister, but building upon his theoretical knowledge as also professor of international relations. When you have all these people, when you look back, and at the end of the day, you also look at some foreign ministers, Ambassador Segun Aderiye, who modified, who redefined Professor Gambari's theory of concentricism by calling it constructive and beneficial concentricism.
Anyway, I think we'll go into all of that details later on. Maybe let's be sequential a little bit. Now, is what you're saying now that NA has become a shadow of its old self? Is that what you're saying in a nutshell?
As far as I know, because I do not want to engage in any self-praise or singing praises, etc., as it is, I think, very honestly, that by the time I was leaving, the NI of the future, as I define it, I said the NI wouldn't have any bright future because I was more than convinced that the governing council I had didn't help matter. The governing council bastardized it. And whatever is happening there...
How did you do that? How?
Well, you see, that was why I was trying to explain what made the NI thick. You see, NI has a tradition. One, if you don't have a PhD, normally you cannot be in the research department. But at a point in time, even by the time of one of my predecessors, they started taking people with a master's degree. But they were compelled to go to University of Lagos for PhD. Some of them completed, some couldn't. The issue is that before you can be a research fellow at the Nigerian Institute of International Affairs, you are supposed to have been well groomed. NI is not a place where you now come to learn how to do research, to learn about methodologies. No. NI was designed to be a center where problematics will be given to you, and then you now begin to apply the already acquired knowledge in the university to find a solution. If you look at it today, look, the government, the Buhari administration doesn't have any foreign policy focus. It doesn't have any foreign policy means.
Okay.
And in this case, the NI is supposed to be the laboratory for the diagnosis of foreign policy problems.
That's right.
So as at the time I was living, you know, the bastardization of the NI was to the extent that when we tell people to go for PhD, the council will come up with different arguments. Look, I do not...
An override.
Yes, I do not want to go into the details of this something on the air.
Okay.
But you see, at the end of the day, I told the government in my letter, all right, in my handover note that, look, the governing council, all right, which was led by a seasoned former governor, politician, military man, respected guy that anywhere he stands, naturally if you take a look at him, you will respect him. But at the end of the day, that means that Shakespeare couldn't have been more correct when he said that there is no art of finding the human construction from the face. This he said in his book, Macbeth.
That's right.
So I think that it was deceit. That is just one aspect. I have never seen a situation whereby somebody will be changing examination results, promotion examination results, and the council will be supporting it and refer to it. You see, it's, I do not want to be watching dirty linen or something.
Yes, I don't think
that's
it's
why,
proper
as at now, the Director General that's there now doesn't have any fault. The foundation already was bad for him.
So what can the righteous do? Okay, well, let's move ahead. Let's move ahead. For Nigeria, you know, the times are really hard economically. But then, to what extent should a nation's foreign policy or foreign relations be allowed to be negatively affected by economic recession?
Well, your question is quite beautiful, but the answer will not be beautiful. The issue is simply that you don't have any foreign policy that can be meaningful if the means of implementation is not provided. There is no goodness in such a foreign policy. Foreign policy has two competing dimensions: what you are pursuing and how you want to get it well pursued. Now, Nigeria is on record to have very good policies that people admire all over the world. Look at the 60s. Nigeria's major policy orientation was to defend black dignity.
All over the world.
All over the world. Under this, we had the issue of apartheid. All right? By that one, Nigerians nowadays, especially those that were born after, let me say, as from 70s, the passport given to a citizen of Nigeria, the inner cover of the passport, inner back cover of the passport, it is clearly stated in paragraph 2 there that the holder of this passport, I repeat, the holder of this passport must fight apartheid with all the tools available to him or her, with all the means available to him or her. Meaning that the Nigerian that you were, that you are, that I was, that I am, we are obligated, we are required to fight, all right, tooth and nail, apartheid. That was a foreign policy position. And then, look at that statement. The statement is such that make use of any means available to you, whether it is legal or illegal. That means that, look, you must bring apartheid down.
By all means possible.
By all means. I think nobody had that policy in the world. The second point there, in the 60s, Jaja Washoko, foreign minister, in 1963, redefined Article 2, paragraph 7 of the UN Charter, according to which member states of the United Nations must not intervene in the domestic affairs of other countries. Now, Jaja Washoko said, because in 1963, Sylvanus Olympio, the president of Togo, was very close to Nigeria, relationship between Nigeria and Togo were very, very cordial, very warm, quote and unquote. But he was assassinated in Togo. Then came up this theory of Jaja Washoko to say, look, we will not close our eyes and see what is happening to our supporter, our brother, our neighbor. And you say we cannot intervene. Say Nigeria will intervene. And Nigeria formulated 2 exceptions to the rule, to the principle of non-interference and non-intervention in the domestic affairs of country. The first one was this Togolese to say, look, if Nigeria's interest is at stake in any country in the West African sub-region, by that time it used to be sub-region until 1991 when it was redefined as a region, Nigeria will always intervene. The second exception is that apartheid cannot be considered the domestic affair of any country in Africa. Where there is apartheid, we will fight, right? We will declare war against. So those were the 2 exceptions. And Nigeria made that one clearly. So if you look at the 60s, that was focused. The post-70s, after the war.
Yes, I was going to come to that. You were talking about the conservative diplomacy, which one was that again? The dynamic diplomacy. All these were coming
yes.
in different...
Yes, citizen diplomacy, all of that.
Then national interest diplomacy,
yes.
Policy of making Africa a centerpiece, you know, of our foreign policy and all of that. Out of all of these shades of diplomacies, which one would you say has served Nigeria the best?
Well, I will think that to a great extent we should look at the technical aid corps policy put in place by Bolaji Akinyemi. It has endured.
Is that one still existing?
Yes, they are there. In fact, they placed an advert 2 weeks ago for the next biennium. All right? We've been sending trainers, teachers, lecturers, academics, all right, to many African countries, to many
How
Caribbean
successful
countries.
has that policy been, really?
Look, I think that if we are talking about success,
Is there funding for it?
yes, there is.
Proper funding?
No, I don't know whether it is proper. But the funding, to an extent, has been moderate. It's not enough. Where I will agree with your undeclared intention, you know, what is intrinsic in your submission is that, yes, are we getting enough for our investment? Are we really making use of it to further project Nigeria's interest in international relations? I will say no. But why? Simply because the technical aid volunteers sent abroad, how do we monitor them in such a way that they can further bring more, you know, result-oriented interest?
You see, that's the...
We have not been doing that.
That's the criticism.
When they come back, are they well received?
Exactly.
Are they even bringing them together to find out? Some of them did very well. I used to know one Dr. Segun Aderiye, that he served in Liberia. He was given a special award, national award there, all right, because he was able to restructure their hospital. He's a medical doctor. What he did there was to the extent that the government did recognize his contribution. Now, when this gentleman returned to Nigeria, he has not been debriefed. I had the opportunity of meeting him probably about a month ago, just by accident. You've not briefed the country. What's your memoir like on this matter? It's like he's writing something along that line now. You mean you've not submitted anything to foreign ministry? He said nobody asked him question. That's where you are right.
Prof, that leads me to the very next question now. Some analysts are saying that Nigeria's changing directions in foreign policy, all right, since independence has been nothing but motion without movement and dynamism without surge.
Well, motion...
Because you just proved it
yes.
now with this example you give.
You see, the major problem...
That we just, you know, base everything on philosophy,
yes,
visionary imagination,
you are right.
You know, but they are not really considered broadly to see what are we getting from this.
You are right. You see, the major problem is very simple to identify.
Good neighborliness, you spend all your money, they turn back to bastardize your head or to abuse you, like South Africa has been doing to Nigeria.
I agree with you, but let's look at it this way. When a country doesn't have a foreign policy focus,
it keeps changing and changing and changing.
There's no way you will not be changing. The people who made such comments, they are right only to the extent that they are talking about foreign policy tactics. Tactics change day after day.
Oh, sure.
But your foreign policy focus does not just change anyhow. So there have been changes at the level of tactical foreign policy. Now, foreign policy strategy is different from foreign policy technique. The technique deals with the modalities.
The details.
The details. How you want to go about that. And you can be changing your tactics from time to time, while the long-term strategy remains the same. Nigeria doesn't have any foreign policy strategy at all. At all. Akiyemi brought in foreign policy strategy, wanted people to say long-term, that we can be a great nation, all right, by ensuring that we have a foreign policy. You see, what we are lacking is this. I believe that if Nigeria adopts a foreign policy of grandeur, that is, of greatness. You know, our center now, we are trying to look at Nigeria in 2060, 2063. All right. In 2060, Nigeria will be 100 years old, you know, as a sovereign and independent nation. African Union has what they call Agenda 2063. We are now looking at where will Nigeria be
At that point?
at that point in time. What are the likely scenarios, the challenges we are to be confronted with? The world over, all foreign ministries are doing day-to-day analysis, reporting on the world. When we were talking about the NIA, for instance, I introduced daily analysis of world events, that 8 a.m. all research fellows must sit down and brainstorm, all right, and then inform the government about likely scenarios. Under Gbenga, Nigeria was doing perfectly well. We were doing this. But the same council, my own council, when the research fellow said, no, this is too much, we cannot be meeting every day, I said, that's what we are paid for. Research fellows must be very, very
up to date.
Up to date. You keep yourself abreast of what is there. But at the end of the day, when they complain that, look, we should not be doing it every day, they complain to council. The council, the same council, approved that, look, you are doing too much, I should give them space, I should allow them. And I was the chief executive.
Okay. Let's move a step ahead. We have a long road to trek now. Jenaike Wachukwu, one-time foreign minister of Nigeria, pursued the idea of economic diplomacy, you remember quite well. And that was to address the nation's economic problem of the time. We had the structural adjustment and all the rest of that. Today, we are facing a similar problem, if not a graver problem. Now, shouldn't we revive that kind of economic diplomacy, policy instrument?
Economic diplomacy, as defined by Segun Aderiye when he was
minister,
second-time minister, was giving priority to economic issues, that we should emphasize economic interest
in our relations.
In our relations
with foreign countries.
He called it economic diplomacy, but in international relations, generally, they call it development diplomacy or diplomacy of economic development. The origins was traced back to as far back as 16th century. Okay, and the principles had been well articulated in international relations. So when it was introduced by Segun Aderiye, he thought that, look, any foreign policy making should look at what economic interest is at stake. That's what it's all about. Now, if you want to understand it better, we can compare it with Agbola Gambari's foreign policy concentrism and Olu Adeniyi's constructive concentrism. Agbola Gambari explained that in all our foreign policy calculations, we should divide the whole world into regions, give priority to the innermost circle. The innermost circle comprises Nigeria and the immediate neighborhood.
Yes.
All right?
West Africa?
No, not West Africa yet. West Africa is the second circle. The innermost is the first one. And he argued that anything happening in the immediate neighboring country should be considered as happening within Nigeria. And that one was consistent. Probably it is largely influenced by the military doctrine, according to which what is happening in Mauritania, in Mali, for the defense people, you should consider it happening at your immediate international frontier. Therefore, you must contain threats. You must not allow anybody to bring the threats closer to you. So in the thinking of Agbola Gambari, that look, insecurity in Benin Republic, in Cameroon, is insecurity in Nigeria. Therefore, give priority to innermost circle, the first one. The second outer circle is West Africa. The third is the whole of Africa. And the fourth is the global world. All right. So he's talking only about prioritization of the environment of foreign policy. But Oluwadeneji came and argued that, true, there is nothing wrong with prioritizing the environment of foreign policy. But what really is the interest you are pursuing in each region? Now, in the immediate neighborhood, what is Nigeria's foreign policy interest? What's the foreign policy focus? What do we really want
to achieve?
Yes. Then, when you move to the outer circle, what do you want in, say, Cote d'Ivoire? What do you want in Senegal? What do you want in the Gambia? He now says, look, we should identify the interest. And in this case, because he called it beneficial and constructive concentrism, Oluwadeneji argued that foreign policy of Nigeria must ensure that in its strategic calculations, what will be beneficial to the Nigerian should be the first thing. What do we gain? Now, it can be economic, it can be political, it can be cultural, it can be scientific, it can be anything. You will now see that when Ike Nwachukwu talked about economic diplomacy, he underscored the word economic. So economic is not encompassing, all right? Stricto sensu. It is limited to
trade and investment.
Trade and investment, that's what he's saying. Mm-hmm. In fact, that's what he emphasized to say, let's do whatever is humanly possible to attract more investment.
He also talked about policy of complementarity.
Yes.
Well, we have to complement the other country you are dealing with.
Precisely. Yeah. You see, the issue is that at the end of the day, what did not make economic diplomacy work very well is just the factor you have just raised. When you are engaging in foreign policy calculations, you don't just consider your own interest only. You must consider the interest of the other.
Of the other person. Okay, at that point, we will take a short break. There's so much more to talk about. We'll be right back after this time out. Stay with us. Welcome back. The program is still Galaxy Line, and my guest in the studio is the immediate past Director General of the NRIA, Professor Bola Akinteriwa. And we're talking about Nigeria's foreign policy or policies. There's so many of them. Now, in the light of the prevailing economic situation in Nigeria today, should the country not begin to review and relax its Afro-centric foreign policy? This is born out of the nasty experiences we've been having from some of these so-called neighboring countries. Some of them are even harboring Boko Haram, joining them to fight us. South Africa is doing its own. Should we now begin to, or should we not begin to review and relax this Afrocentricity stuff?
Yeah, thank you. You see, Afrocentric policy, we need to understand it very, very well. Many people talk about it, but without having a clear understanding, not just of its implication, but what it was designed to mean. Yes. Now, let's begin with the concept of non-alignment in Nigeria's foreign policy. Many scholars, many observers, many international scholars wrote that Nigeria said it has a non-alignment policy, but it aligned with the former Eastern European, with Russia, etc. No, non-alignment doesn't mean that. The way Tafawa Balewa, the way Jajawashuku, all these first foreign ministers explain it is that, look, Nigeria should have, when we say non-alignment, it simply means Nigeria will have the freedom to decide whether to align or not to align. It is not the actual,
siding
yes. So the mere fact that Nigeria decided not to be aligned to anyone is what makes it non-alignment. All right. It is the freedom, the sovereignty that the government of Nigeria should have. All right. So when Africa was made centerpiece, centerpiece was introduced in 1976 by Professor Adebayo Adedeji in his report to the Obasanjo and Mohammed administration. Murtala Muhammad. Now what happened was that before 1976, we talked about Africa being the cornerstone. Cornerstone, that was the word, that was the operative word of Nigeria's foreign policy. Now, what happened with the word cornerstone? The meaning is simply that instead of making Africa, putting it in a sharp corner of foreign policy, all right, and you are taking the issue out one by one, Adedeji said, no, Africa should be the centerpiece. Bring Africa to the center. Let it be visible globally. So you are sitting to the left, to the right, to the center, you will see Africa. So put Africa in the foreign policy of Nigeria, meaning that all strategic calculations should be moved around Africa. That's the meaning of centerpiece. Now, when Obasanjo came in at a point in time, he said, look, where our interest is, whether it's in Africa, in Jamaica, in Indonesia, America, anywhere, that one will be the center piece.
The cornerstone.
Yes, the cornerstone. We'll be moving. But later on, he believed that that does not mean that Africa will be relegated into something. A school of thought in Nigeria came out again to argue that, look, let Nigeria be the centerpiece. That is, whatever is at stake within Nigeria should be the centerpiece. So let foreign policy now be considered, all right, within the context of what happens in Nigeria. That argument is not good enough because no country can be an island on its own.
Himself.
What is wrong with Nigeria's foreign policy since 1960 to date, which no one is addressing, which no foreign policy, no foreign minister is addressing, is this. Our foreign policy has always been considered, analyzed, all right, from the perspective of Nigeria only. We have never looked at Nigeria in the foreign policy calculations of other countries. How do other countries look at us? I remember...
Or perceive us.
Perceive us, yes. Perception is one of the issues. How they relate with us is another. Okay. Now, we complain that they treat us like this, they treat us like that. But no government has bothered. I made a spirited effort to say, look, let the government fund a research, all right, that will involve considering all countries of the world. Look at Nigeria in their thinking. And then we will now develop a new foreign policy attitude, car per car, that is case by case, country by country. And then we will know. Now we talk about, say, Francophone Africa.
What was the response of government to that proposition?
Well, it was accepted, but no action.
Jettisoned.
They don't provide any money, they don't do anything. I'm trying to do that one in my center, to do this, to say, look, if you nominate, if you designate an ambassador to go to a particular country, please, you should have data already on Nigeria's relationship with the country. Your own is just to give to the ambassador such a document for him to go and read. He will now complement whatever is given by the mission he's going to. Every mission of Nigeria, like any diplomatic mission, has what we call mission charter. Mission charter is about the mandate given to the mission to pursue, to achieve. You have some foreign policy interests you are supposed to protect. That's mission charter. And I'm saying that now you need to put the attainment of your mission charter within the framework of the perception of your host country. You know, that's what we have not been doing. The moment we are able to do that one, the moment we can have a foreign minister, a government that will look at how to make Nigeria great, not from within, because many people have argued that if the economy is bad, you can't do much. If you don't have much money, you cannot attain. I say it's wrong.
That's one of the questions I also have for you.
You can use the international environment to enhance.
Is it the recession now that is not making us hear much about foreign affairs?
Far from it.
So what's the problem?
The problem is the non-calculation, non-definition of a focus for foreign policy. It's as simple as that. You determine what you want to be. If you say, look, we want to be a giant of Africa, we want to lead Africa, we want to be the first in the manufacturing of, let's say, this table. You determine that. Then the next thing now is you come up with a foreign policy tactics. How do you attain it?
To help you achieve that.
For instance, under the
because of time now,
okay.
I think we have to go a little more into some other areas.
Okay.
The Biafran experience of the late 60s taught Nigeria a very hard lesson about the need for good neighborliness. Now, with the turn of events lately, will you say Nigeria is safe with its neighbors in case of outbreak of hostilities?
Well, you are certainly referring to the role played by Cameroon during the war.
Exactly.
Amadou Ahidjo was a friend, all right? You are also referring to the Red Cross role in Dahomey by that time, before it became Bini.
Exactly.
When Dahomey decided to allow Red Cross to be flying relief materials to Biafran war. By that time, that was the lesson we now learned, that look, good neighborliness should be a major policy, yes, which was defined in 1955 in the Bandung conference. Now, as of today, it is very difficult to say that Nigeria can be secure or can enjoy the support of the...
Or can boast of that security.
Precisely. One, if you look at the Lake Chad Basin area, we have Niger, we have Chad, and we have Cameroon as our neighbors. The three of them are Francophone countries. Now, we had problem with Cameroon in the beginning, in the fight against Boko Haram. Cameroon was not cooperating until Nigeria went to France with them, and the French intervened before an entente cordial understanding was established at the level of Nigeria and Cameroon. Even though Cameroon is our neighbor, one, by geopolitical propinquity and by geographical, by territorial contiguity, where you cannot change your neighbor. Geographically, they are there.
Yes.
But you see, you will discover that the animosity, which is not always expressed. I like diplomats because all of them like to deceive themselves and deceive the public.
Is that right?
Yes, they say relationship is warm, is good. But they know that the relationship is not warm.
It's very, very bad.
So, from 1961, November 11 plebiscite, all right, when Cameroon lost part of its territory to Nigeria, they had been celebrating the regret, the loss, the unhappiness, every March 10. Yet, we say relationship is wrong. The Bakassi issue is there. Most recently now, regardless of the politics of it, Nigerians are said to be killing. They are not complying with the Green Tree Agreement. Yes, we say relationship is cordial. Now, when you ask me the question, can we boast
of being safe?
Precisely.
You know, with all these
then I will
neighbors.
tell you, in light of this, please, the Anglophone area of Cameroon and the Bakassi militants in Nigeria, they are discussing the possibility of coming together to fight. All right? Nigeria doesn't believe in supporting secession in Cameroon. But the issue now is that the same militants are fighting the government of Nigeria. They also talk about their own independence, meaning that Nigerian government itself does not have an absolute control over the situational reality in
the Cameroon.
In the Cameroon, yes, the Anglophone side there. So when you now come to Benin Republic, etc., you know, the most reliable, the most friendly neighbor of Nigeria is Niger Republic. We've not been having territorial disputes, etc., all along. We supply them electricity, they pay less. In fact, Niger and Nigeria, northern Nigeria in particular, we can say it's just one people. But that is not sufficient. Benin Republic, look, the major problem with the Francophone neighbors is that the European Union is trying to take advantage of the Francophone neighbors to penetrate Nigeria the more. Look at EPA, Economic Partnership Agreement. Everybody has signed it except Nigeria and the Gambia.
Right.
The Gambia didn't sign it because of Nigeria, because the Gambia depends largely on Nigeria for many things.
So in totality, are we safe with our neighbors?
We are not safe and we are not unsafe. The issue is that it depends on how. If you are driving your vehicle from Lagos to Ibadan to Abuja, if you do not want to have accident, then you must evolve a strategy for driving. Strategy of either not overspeeding, strategy of patience, strategy of going slowly, etc. So if you want to be safe, it's a function of evolving a new strategy, not based on the old frameworks.
The good neighborliness and all that.
Good neighborliness.
Spend money with them and all that.
Good neighborliness should be predicated on the principle of reciprocity.
Okay.
I don't agree with what is good neighborliness. Must you have good neighborliness to the detriment of your own survival?
And national interest or personal interest?
Whatever is the case. Please, you see, the issue, when we are complaining about foreign policy, the issue is that Nigeria's foreign policy is very reactive.
Not proactive.
Precisely. You see, it's supposed to set a standard. Let me tell you, I had the opportunity, you mentioned it rightly earlier on. I had the opportunity to be a special advisor to two foreign ministers. I worked there. I learned a lot of lessons from the guys there. Those directors, please, they are not just ordinary directors. Minister of Foreign Affairs has the largest concentration of directors in the public service. There are many. They are good. They have sagacious minds. They have the desired onions required for analysis. But the issue is that at the end of the day, the setup, the organizational setup, is such that it does not allow the best input to be given. So it's a systemic problem. That's why we are not able, all right, to act. You can just imagine how suddenly somebody will be talking about Morocco coming to join the ECOWAS. All right? Then you can now see how they are aiding and abetting Morocco to come and join whatever Nigeria is doing under technical cooperation. No, it's not in the national interest.
I'm getting worried that we won't be able to finish, you know. There's so much to still talk about. The issue about officers within the ministry, just mentioned something about that. Now, there was this presidential special advisor on diaspora matters. She had a brush, or a couple of brushes, you know, with the Foreign Affairs Ministry, or maybe directly the minister.
Yeah.
What's your reaction to that?
But you see, the issue is that it's part of non-foreign policy focus. The ministry is supposed to have a broad-based focus. All others will now fall in line, whether it is the research institute, NI is to be giving the research input, special advisor. You are certainly talking about Abike Dabiri, particularly there was the time
over
he
the
advised,
South African stuff, you know.
Yes, he advised that Nigerians who do not have any pressing, any urgent reason, assignment to do in America should wait until the U.S. policy. Yes, that was what he said.
She said.
Now, in this case, he's advisor to Mr. President. An advisor not only has the mouth to talk, but the position to occupy and say it. But the way the foreign minister, Geoffrey Onyema, responded, reacted, was not the ideal thing. All right. If you are saying no, you cannot make that statement on behalf of government all along. We can understand. But at the end of the day, what made Onyema wrong, fundamentally, was that he unnecessarily assumed that he knew everything.
That he had the monopoly of the
knowledge of the issue. The problem was simply that, as at the time he was talking, there were repatriated guys at the airport at that moment. Okay? And the minister said, no, there was nothing like that. Simply because of a wrong deductive analogy.
But would you support fully the idea of a special advisor just going straight with information across like that without probably, you know, comparing notes with the Minister of Foreign Affairs?
Please. Another name for Nigeria should be United States of Nigeria, not United States of America. One, if you look at the presidential system in America, how it works, you can see how the press, the people, are taking their president, discussing it. This is what we call development of the mind, highest level. Is Donald Trump in agreement with CNN? It's not. The Republican Party, Republican Senate, all right, majority of them there, do they agree with him? Please, this is where psychology of human differences comes in. Nothing prevents Abike Dabiri from making a pronouncement. Please allow me this opportunity, let me make this point. When I was SA to Segun Aderiye, the foreign minister of Egypt convened an international conference where he lambasted Segun Obasanjo and my minister. The African Union by that time had Segun Obasanjo as the chairman of the Assembly of Heads of State and Segun Aderiye as chairman of Council of Ministers. What happened was that a committee of 10 was set up to go and negotiate with countries that have interest in becoming permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. So what happened was that they accused Nigeria of monopolizing, using official position to promote Nigeria's interest there, which was not true. I had the opportunity of traveling with my minister to Japan, to all the countries involved. And never was there any occasion that Nigeria tried to use the opportunity to promote Nigeria's interest. But the Egyptian foreign minister went on air to lambast us, and it was published in Arabic. It was Daily Trust in Nigeria that published it. when I read the reports, I requested for the original text. I got it translated.
Okay.
I ran up.
Yes.
I quickly ran up.
I have one little one for you again.
Oh, okay.
Before we finish.
So you see, what happened was that when I got this message, I wrote an article and said Egypt was not even an African country. You are African in the morning, in the afternoon you are Arab, in the evening you are not. That look, you cannot be doing this. And you cannot criticize the president or foreign minister on pages of a newspaper in Egypt. But they lambasted us. I reacted. What happened? Olusegun Obasanjo called my minister to say, what is this guy doing? Because their president called Olusegun Obasanjo, it became a major issue. But our ambassador there, Ambassador Gali, place, we have fine, seasoned ambassadors. Gali told them, well, don't let me go into all these things.
Yes.
So you see, generally,
yes,
we need to know where we are going in terms of foreign policy.
On a final note, our president, arguably the most influential in Africa, President Muhammadu Buhari, has been out of office for so long on account of illness. What's the implication of this for the country's foreign policy pursuits?
Well, in terms of implication...
maybe 1 or 2 minutes.
Well, the implication can be explained in 2 ways. The first way is to say, look, it's not a big deal since we have an acting president who is a plenipotentiary. He has all powers to act, to do and undo. So in this case, in terms of foreign policy implication, anybody who has...
Isn't that on paper? Is that real? Really real? All this plenipotentiary stuff you're propounding.
Yes, you see, on paper, that is the legitimate aspect.
Okay.
You can have any legal position on anything, but if you don't act yourself, it is the individual. So if Oshibajo doesn't take advantage of his active powers and then do what is good, fine. His own is just, Oshibajo wants to show the whole world that he's loyal. And he will want to be listening to his boss. Right? And that's where I disagree with him. He sees Buhari as a father. And I'm saying, please, the Nigerian business is not that of father and son. Please, you comply with the constitution, you act. And that one will help Buhari in the long run.
To achieve.
Yes.
All right. That seems to be the point at which we're going to draw the